Hey team, this is Grant David Collins, and welcome to Basement Philanthropy, a place for people who do not want to wait until they're rich or retired to create meaning, connection, and impact with their money, regardless of the amount. On this episode, we're going to be talking to a couple about their philanthropy experience and why giving with two people is a little bit different than giving with just one. So let's get started. There are many reasons why pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. It's inexpensive, anybody can jump on the court, and if you want to play at a high level, you absolutely can. But there are a lot of sports that can fall into those three categories, so what makes pickleball different? In my opinion, it's absolutely the community. You can meet so many quality individuals by showing up to a random park to play this sport, and that is exactly how I met Brooke and Tanner Thygerson. Brooke and Tanner are some of the most genuine and authentic people I have ever met in my life and have been such a support to me as I have been building and growing the Basement Philanthropy community. They both have big aspirations for what they want to do with their giving and pickleball, and I got to talk to them about both of those things in my interview a few weeks ago. So let's get into it. Okay, so what I want to know is tell me what role pickleball is playing in both of your lives now. So like you guys you're pretty into it for like the beginning of the pickleball wave in Utah. What does that look like now? What are the like aspirations? And we don't have to like hide things here. Like you can tell the large following we have here at Basement Philanthropy all about what is the dream? What does that look like?
So I think, I don't know, I'm looking at Brooke for this one because we have pretty big aspirations when it comes to pickleball. Like it's kind of the center of our life right now.
Okay.
Let me just quote Tanner. We were in Lake Powell for the last week and a half-ish, and we were just at his parents' house before this, and he was laying on the couch watching pickleball, and he says, "Wow, after a week and a half of being gone, it just makes me realize how much I love this sport." Just casually watching pickleball, confessing his love. So, I mean,
it's like,
continue. This is
it's
the
like
real
a
deal.
literal relationship. Like,
It is.
Oh my gosh, like distance makes the heart grow fonder.
It does.
And you actually experience that.
It does. We haven't played in like a week and a half, and I'm getting antsy to get back on the court. So
No. So when we are home, though, we try and play about an hour to 2 hours every day. We have a pickleball machine. It's like a ball feeder, kind of like maybe what you'd use for tennis.
Yeah.
And yeah, we try and get on the courts every day. And
yeah, the goal is 600 hours a year. So
Tanner works at a pickleball club.
Yep.
We just applied for some jobs for the PPA, the Professional Pickleball Association, to work and run their
pickleball events.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then eventually, like, as a player, I think we want to go pro. We want to play mixed doubles together.
Okay.
And then also just like coaching. So we'd love to coach pickleball.
So we're going to kind of transition a little bit into the topic of today as far as what we were going to be speaking into. What I'm really excited about is hearing about giving from the perspective of two individuals that have decided to live their lives together. I think that there's a lot of complexity that can kind of come up in the topic of money specifically, and as an extension, giving, that isn't the same as what comes up with me as an individual. Like, I decide what I'm going to do, and then I go out and do it. And in your case, there's likely like another step involved in that process. And that's what I would love to kind of dig around this, because most of the podcasts that we've had up to this point have been just individual givers. And there's a lot of people out there that are married or have, a partner in one sense or the other. So before we dive too quickly into like that process, we'll get there. I'd love to hear from both of you what giving looked like apart, and we'll kind of bring it together later.
So I feel like with me, I feel like there wasn't a whole ton of creativity with giving, like growing up. There were just always opportunities for service or opportunities to give. I think mostly probably through the like church environment. Like as a young man, like my dad was like super heavily involved in like everything church related.
Yeah.
And so anytime there was like a church service project, like we would always be there helping trim bushes or cut down trees or whatever, shovel snow. And so I feel like that was a lot of my experience with giving and service was just like, okay, I just got to show up and follow what my dad or my brother is doing, you know? And I feel like as I've gotten a little bit older, I guess my perspective of that has shifted a little bit. I've started to become a little bit more independent and realize that, you know, when giving is a choice, it can really become so much more powerful than just like showing up to some activity.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you're the one that's exercising your agency to make this decision and give to someone rather than, just show up. Like shortly after getting off my mission, I had an experience. Really, it was like my first experience giving outside of a holiday as like, I don't know, almost like a monetary or like giving an object to someone else.
Yeah.
I was just at Little Caesars one day or driving to Little Caesars to get myself a pizza. And I drove by this family and they had the sign out that said, anything helps, like food, money, like what, I don't know, just like the classic sign. I was like,
Sure.
you know, I want to do something for them. So I drove down to Little Caesars. I bought, instead of just one pizza, I bought 2 pizzas.
Yeah.
And I went and like parked on the street and I walked it over to them, like walked across the street and just gave it to them. It wasn't a very big thing, but it was definitely a perspective shift. Like, wow, that felt different than 12 Days of Christmas or anything else because, I don't know. It was just, I guess it was the different time of year or just the independence of doing it by myself. But, and I had a couple of like smaller experiences like that, like after getting off my mission that, I guess made me realize that giving is a little bit different than what I had grown up believing it was.
Right. The funny thing is that what I've started to learn is that giving when you start out can literally just be one step outside of yourself. So you're already on the way to Little Caesars. You're already going to buy a pizza for yourself or your roommates or whatever. You see this person that could be in need and you just tack on like a little bit. And it's such an easy way to start getting into giving. And it's not like you're going to start a foundation around that, or it's not like you're going to start a philanthropy around that. And, you know, who knows what situation those people are really in? Are they really in a dire situation? And those are some of the questions that we start to run through. But even if they are or are not, that first step of giving and just seeing a little bit outside of yourselves or outside of yourself makes a huge difference with your perspective. Brooke, so tell us, and you don't have to necessarily contrast it unless it is very contrasting, but how did that show up in your upbringing?
Yeah, so I'd say that my parents actually approached giving in 2 pretty, distinct ways. My dad gave his time. He was super big into just serving other people. He would go get his hair cut down the street by some neighbor that was struggling financially because he knew she needed the money, or he would go shovel people's walkways or just like service. That was his way. Whereas my mom, she was more giving with money. She was always willing to like, just more like spend money on people. And so I think that was really helpful for me to see that there are 2 different ways you can give, whether it's, you know, through your time or through your means. And I feel like that's kind of helped sculpt the way I view giving. Is there's lots of different avenues to do it, whether it's time or money or a combination of both.
Sure. Yeah. Do you feel like, Tanner, as we kind of jump back into maybe your experience, when it came to money, was that ever discussed? Was that ever a part of things? Or was it just like you come from a religious family, so I guess, you know, we pay tithing. Was money ever brought up? It sounds like money was somewhat a part of Brooke's experience. What about yours?
Not like particularly. Like around Christmas time, like we'd find ways to give gifts to people or leave it on the doorstep, or we'd do like 12 days of Christmas for someone in need. But it wasn't like a huge part of our giving.
Yeah. What's so interesting about all of the conversations I've had so far on this podcast where I've interviewed somebody is that giving has looked very similar for everyone. Now, granted, there is a like particular demographic that we're pulling from, and so it's likely that it's going to show up very like similarly. But what's interesting is that it seems like growing up in the households of the people that I've talked to so far, it's like, yeah, service was there. And if we were ever going to involve money, it was going to be around a holiday. And it was likely going to be 12 days of Christmas. I've heard that so many times. On
Sorry
this
to be basic.
It's so interesting that is, I guess, where everybody like has thought about or has experienced giving. And does everybody just get introduced to giving through 12 days of Christmas? And if so, how the heck do we stop that? Because not that 12 days of Christmas is bad or anything, but it's just kind of like...
You can only give 12 days a year. That's it. The other 300 plus days, nope.
That's right. Oh my gosh. So you two meet. What does that look like? How do you two meet on a first date setup, or how do you play pickleball for the first time? That's probably the better question there.
So our first interaction is I am a transfer student I originally went to Utah State before my mission.
Okay.
I decided to go to BYU when I got home, and one of my roommates at Utah State had also transferred to BYU.
Okay.
And I was like really scared. I was like, I don't know anyone here, so I reach out to her. I'm like, hey, I need friends. And she's like, hey, we're going to hike Mount Timpanogos this weekend, like starting at midnight. Like we're gonna go hardcore, see the sunrise. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I decided to go, and that's where me and Tanner met. Was this friend served in his mission, so it was a mutual friend, just like group hike, I guess. And we met at the top. So that was our initial meeting. Was at the top of Mount Timpanogos.
So then, what happens next to result in the pickleball? Did you talk about pickleball on top of Timpanogos?
So it was on the way down. We talked pretty much the whole way down, and just like I think we vibed, so we got along pretty well.
I hope so.
And she brought up pickleball, and I was like, oh yeah, I played that with my family. I like pickleball. Obviously not like the religion like it is now to me, but
yeah, I converted him, and now he's converting me. Because I was the one who got him into it, really.
Yeah.
I'm the one who reached out after the hike. I DM'd him over Instagram and invited him to the park.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. I said I needed a fourth player.
How soon after you meet do you get into a formal relationship? Like, do you become a couple?
It was about 2 months after.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Yep.
So as you're dating, when does the topic of finance come up? Because that's kind of our maybe a dunk point into giving. But when do you start like talking about finance?
No, I'd say it was a pretty important part, not of the dating process, but once we started talking marriage, like my parents would always stress that, like, marry someone that you agree with financially, that's like on your same page.
So since that was his number one concern, we talked about finances a lot. I felt like I had to prove myself. Everywhere we go, I'm like trying to order the cheapest thing. I'm just kidding. But
what's your kids' menu look like?
What's the cheapest thing I can buy?
And then I got worried that she wouldn't spend enough money.
So that's kind of the finance side of things. So do you have the same type of discussions around giving or service or those types of like applications, I guess, of finances as you're getting together and as you're planning your lives and those types of things?
The first 6 months we were married, we tried to budget, but we didn't really have something that was super consistent. Like at the end of the month, we'd look at it, but it didn't really change our spending habits.
Yeah.
But like we found a system that works really well for us. And since doing your course, we kind of know the amount we want to give, and it's just in our budget every single month. Like we don't have to worry about it. It's not some big discussion. Like we both know and are on the same page with how much we want to give. And so that way we can both be actively looking and having those discussions because we know the money's there already.
Got it. So before you went through the quick introduction to Micro-Philanthropy that I've put together as part of what I'm doing here, it was kind of one of those things that wasn't maybe a budget item or even really discussed. So maybe there were opportunities that you guys were maybe giving, but it was more like maybe what Tanner had explained earlier about his upbringing around giving, which is, yeah, we'll show up to a service project, we'll do something, we'll see somebody that's in need and check our wallets to see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, exactly. Is there room in the budget? We don't know. Like maybe that would have hindered us before, but now it's like a creative outlet for us to like use our funds.
Yeah, that's cool. So did you find that you two were pretty aligned with what you wanted to create with giving, or did that take a little bit of work as far as, yeah, this is kind of the vision that I have it for it, and then, you know, that's what you get with two people. Like for me, it's just like, oh, I'm going to go out and do that because I'm the only person I have to check in with. As you all were working through that initial, like setting up that system, did you have to do any work around that, or were you pretty aligned going into it?
I think it's more we were like excited when someone had a good idea to give. And so it's not like someone would come with, okay, this is what I want to do with our money from the budget this month. And the other person would be like, oh, I was thinking more along these lines. Like there wasn't really ever a conflict there. It's more just like, oh, you have a great idea. Yeah, let's go do it. Let's jump on that.
Cool.
ASAP.
Cool.
And I think something that aligns really well for us is neither of us are super intricate planners or like come up with things way far in advance. I think we like to kind of do things in the spur of the moment or things that are more organic than like kind of trying too hard. And so I think it was always really easy for us because we had kind of the same ideas of, you know, let's go get a pizza, we're already on our way, or, you know, certain things that are just more simple. So it wasn't like one of us wanted to do something super elaborate and like detailed, and the other person's like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
So luckily we both kind of have that same perspective.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that you all have been involved with then.
Yeah, so our most recent one is we went on a family vacation with my family, and we got back a day before everyone else, and we brought a few like bins of food and stuff they didn't need on the trip anymore. And when we got home, we made sure to like clean everything really nice, and we bought my mom some flowers and a nice card just thanking her for taking us on a trip with them. And like we could have just cleaned the house and I kind of left it at that, but we thought it'd be nice to like show how much we appreciated her by doing something a little extra.
Yeah.
And I think that before we budgeted that in, that wouldn't have happened because, you know, we spent like $10 on flowers, like $5 on a card. Like, I mean, nothing huge, but like, I don't think we would have done that before we had that in the budget because, you know, it's just extra money to spend and we had just been on vacation. So like, so just having that there was valuable, and it just frees it up.
So it almost like gave you
things.
permission to do that. It's almost like it's there, it's available. And because you know that you have whatever amount that you're spending a month set aside, it's not even an extra expense. It's just like waiting there to be used.
Exactly. And I mean, it always sounds like the initial spark always gets you really hyped, but sometimes like in that waiting period between like the idea and the execution it gets a little fuzzy because we got back the night before. We were staying the night and not leaving until the day after, and we got back and we were exhausted and we're like, oh, we'll go do it tomorrow. Like we're exhausted. And we did, and we got to the point where we were about to leave to head back to Provo, and we're like, well, do we want to go buy those flowers now that we're like all ready to go?
That was the point of conflict. It was just like, oh, we're exhausted and we're ready to get on the road. But we did it anyway.
So yeah, we're like, no, this feels good. Like we can go spend 30 minutes at the store and like writing a card and stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned too is just like, I don't know, kind of cut that time down for at least for us between the execution or the idea and the execution.
Yeah. What's funny is that people would likely not say that what you did, they likely would never have used the word philanthropy to describe this experience that you had with your family around buying some flowers, buying some like a card, working through that. But the interesting thing is that it is such an incredible building block and is philanthropy. Like philanthropy, there's no like limit. It's not like you have to spend X amount of dollars in order to consider this philanthropy. Like $5, $2, 2 cents could be philanthropy. And it's the action of creating good as an outcome with your money. And so that's what I love to talk to people about. And we were texting around this, and you two were a little bit hesitant to even come on the podcast. You're like, Grant, we haven't done this like big, crazy thing yet. But what I would say to you two is that you have, because you're making space for it. And yeah, maybe the first thing is like flowers or pizza or whatever, but you all know how things build and grow. And it really, I will likely follow you till the day you die. So you're welcome. But you'll see that like, you'll start to understand more of what depth looks like around what impact do we actually want to have on the world? How do we start using our money to create that impact? What does that look like? What organizations could we be a part of? Or is there a way for us to use pickleball to be involved with that? Like, there's so many avenues that start to be opened up, just like what you guys have experienced as you've just put a little bit of money aside, that it's, I'm just really excited to see what happens there. Any other things that you guys would share? I love that experience. Is there any other experiences that you've had either together or personally that you would want to give as like examples for people? Because that's probably what I get the most of. People are like, what do I do? Like, it's so hard. It's kind of like an experience like what Tanner just talked about.
I have something.
Yeah, go for it.
So,
she has all the good ideas.
I just need a partner in crime to do it, I guess. But
Hey, that's good.
in my job, I'm a personal trainer, and so every hour we just have back-to-back clients, and in between you wipe down the mats and the equipment, and
Yeah.
there was about a 2-week span we were out of like our cleaning spray, and so we were like using like water, like just things were a little weird. And my boss, he's super busy. He's a business owner, and he has a blended family, and he's just really busy. And I was like, I should go like buy the cleaning spray for him, like because he's busy, and I'm sure it's hard for him to get to whatever grocery store he wants to go to. And so I ended up going and buying some cleaning spray for them and for the gym, and it just was one less thing he had to do, and it wasn't that expensive. And I was happy I could contribute when someone else didn't have the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so those are they're just so good examples. And there's probably some people that are listening to this interaction and saying, what the heck? Like, that's a business expense. They should like be paying for you, or they should be like be able to run their business in a way that they don't rent out a cleaner or whatever. And like, that's not the point. If you're like thinking about that, it's not the point here. Like, the point is that Brooke is starting to see her money as something that can do something about a situation. There's not cleaner. Oh, well, I've got stuff set aside, and there's philanthropic things that are attached to this. I want to, show my boss I care, or take some load off of his back, even if he is your boss. Like, we don't have to segment those things. And that's what the whole world of micro-philanthropy is about, is just getting started. And it's like a snowball. Little small piece of snow rolling down a hill at first, but then it just collects and collects. And you likely have seen this even in your lives up until now. I mean, you can see it in what you've even told me. Like, there's things that are drastically different than they were 6 months ago. And in the same way that pickleball has started to be this like front seat driver in your lives, giving can have that same effect as it's a focus. To kind of wrap things up, what if you're talking to a couple about giving, what advice would you give them about getting involved?
I feel like the biggest thing I would say, we kind of already touched on it, but just get your finances in order. Because if you already are a little like some contention there, spending more money on things, and maybe like, well, you're spending this much on your hobby and you're doing this, and it's like, well, there's already that contention there. And if someone wants to give more, like kind of give, it could be a point of stress. And so I would say first kind of like get on the same page with finances, because once you free that up, like you said, you can just get bigger and bigger with your giving, because you don't have to worry about making ends meet or like reaching your financial goals.
Yeah, it's awesome. Tanner, anything that you would?
I think just being on the same page as your spouse, like, kind of what we talked about, just like someone has an idea and we just jump on it. I think we can do that because we're pretty unified, really just in like everything, including finances.
Yeah.
And so just I guess having that trust in each other to make decisions. I don't know. I think that's an invaluable skill.
Yeah. I love from working through your story around this, from the very beginning, it seems like either like explicitly or just inherently in who you two are, this was going to happen in one way or another. And the intention that you took to the dating process, specifically in finance, that has opened this up is really, really cool for somebody who is not in a committed relationship right now, because the audience that we have here at Based on Philanthropy spans a lot of different people and life situations. And as a person that is on that side, it just makes me think of being more intentional around that as I'm working through that. Because honestly, it sounds like there's no stress over there with this. Now, obviously, there's stress in other ways, or finances are always interesting as far as looking through it. But like, you guys have kind of made it look pretty easy. And it's not because it quote unquote is easy. What I've heard from what you've said is that you spent a lot of time figuring that out before you got in a relationship, and you've just continued that. And so that's the quote unquote easy part. It would be challenging to go from 0 to 100, but if you go in incremental steps, man, it's not a lot of stress. There's not a lot of friction involved.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to point out, we are still in college. We both work part-time. Like, it's not like we are super established or anything. So really anyone can get into this just with a little bit of discussion, being on the same page, planning. Like, it doesn't have to be stressful, like you said.
Yeah. One last question before we close things out. What's the difference that this has made in your marriage or just in your lives? Like, this is a pretty big step, I guess, from where you were at even maybe a year ago or before you were married. What difference is this new experience y'all are having with giving? What is that making in your lives? And again, it can be as a marriage or and as a couple or personally or whatever you would share in between that.
Yeah, I think that as a new married couple, it's really easy to focus on yourselves and become selfish, because you're planning for the future. You're thinking about, okay, how can we become pro pickleball players?
Yeah.
Or how can we afford a house? Or I don't know, you're just, because there's all of these unknowns after you get married, you just become very self-centered, or it's easy to fall into that trap. But I feel like even just putting in that $20, $25 a month for Micro-Philanthropy, like it takes away that focus a little bit, because it's like, okay, yeah, we are working on building our life together, but we're looking to affect other people's lives as well.
Cool. Yeah, Brooke, anything you would add on to that?
Yeah, I think personally, it's helped me to think bigger. Like you said, not just think of giving in a 12 days of Christmas sense, but it's allowed me to become more creative and allow myself to be creative without any guilt. And I think that's been my favorite thing. And just the personal character development that comes with thinking outside of yourself and just thinking bigger. I think that's the biggest thing, just the personal development of expanding my mind.
Yeah, man. That's so cool. I love this. Well, yeah, you too. Thanks for making my day today. Thanks for walking through the setup that was the hour that we spent together in my basement before we even started going. Really appreciate that as we're kind of building and doing different things here. I love that you two decided to annoy me at the pickleball courts probably over a year ago now, because yeah, I love your friendship, your support, and what we've been doing, and the good that you two are creating in the world. It's just awesome. So just really, really appreciate that. Well, team, that's it for me. Let's go out into the world and create good with the money in our pockets together. Talk soon.